Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you all for joining us today for this conference on environment, social, and governance, organized by Tamayaz, EITL, and the International Finance Corporation, IFC. Today, we will also be holding our fourth graduation ceremony, which is actually the first to be held online, during which we will also announce 49 newly certified directors who have successfully completed the Corporate Director Certification Program, and who have all secured a passing score on the online exam. Without any further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Saad Sabra, Country Head of International Finance Corporation, part of the World Bank, to say a few welcoming remarks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me well? I guess the voice is fine, right? Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Excellent. Thank you very much and welcome everyone. Welcome to our collaborative network and the 51 or 49 members who have participated in the Directors Training Series and benefited from this invaluable resources which IFC alongside Tamayaz have been able to offer, and the true sense of experience of fellowship and aspiration to promote corporate governance and excellence in the boards and managing the boards in the private sector in Lebanon. I want to say a few words as far as the welcome remarks, and it's basically driven by IFC's true beliefs of the added value and the contribution towards sustainable development in the private sector in Lebanon, a private sector that endorses true environmental, social, and governance measures in board business. This program, despite these unprecedented circumstances in the country, remains highly crucial for IFC. The program is demonstrating the passion that we have at IFC to build a network of first-class directors that will be able to contribute to a strong private sector, a sector that can in turn form a strong foundation to take Lebanon to a better place, hopefully sooner than later. Of course, we all know that to be a director of an organization is a very, very truthfully enormous responsibility. Our director graduates today, which I'm pleased to learn that out of the 49, 19 of which are from the insurance sector, and I think about 10 of them are representing women that lead business. And the Women League for the League of Lebanese League for Women in Business, which is truly, truly aspiring. And so we understand that in the current context of the very unfortunately unauthorized environment in the country at the present time, and the ever challenging complexities in doing business in Lebanon, these type of competencies and experiences are much needed to actually help put Lebanon into more of a collaborative space where the situation can become better. And for instance, we anticipate that directors that will be participating in financial institutions boards or insurance companies boards are expected to know, understand, and deal with the current complexities and the set of risks that will demonstrate support in reforming these sectors going forward. Of course, continuous learning and development has therefore become more imperative for directors to add value to their organizations. We at IFC, as part of the World Bank Group, continue to be keen on supporting the Lebanese private sector. For those of you who don't know, the World Bank Group was able to recently launch the Reform, Recovery, and Reconstruction Framework, which came as a result or after the drastic measure that Lebanon had to live through with the explosion of Beirut port. This is not to mention the already existing challenges in the country, macroeconomically, socially, and the COVID-19 situation. This framework takes into account a set of measures that would establish a reform agenda that would lead to a broader sustainable recovery for the country, which will also build a foundation for reconstruction. We're confident today that with this framework and an authorizing environment in place, we will be able to actually contribute to rebuilding better Lebanon. And this is the type of aspiration that we have building on the type of resources that Lebanon has to offer, including those specific to corporate governance. I'm confident that today's cohort will be acting as a promoter of corporate governance excellence in the country, and I look forward to really continuing our partnership journey with Tamayas towards making this difference in the corporate governance development of the private sector in Lebanon and the region. I'm so sorry I don't have time to stay longer than I would like to today in this session. I will be listening, but I have to disconnect very shortly, and I look forward to connecting with each and every one of you in the near future. So thank you. Over.
Thank you, Mr. Sabra. Now I would like to invite Dr. Fuad Mekhul excuse me 1 second, to resume my share. I would like to invite Dr. Fuad Mekhul, President of RDCL World and CEO of Zinco Group, and the Dean of the School of Business and Management at the University of St. Joseph, Beirut. Please, Dr. Mekhul. Dr. Mekhul, are you with us? It seems Dr. Mekhul did not join yet. So we'll wait for a few seconds for Dr. Mekhul to join. In the meantime, I would like to advise everyone, since the session is online, so please, if any one of you would like to ask any question during the panel or after the panel, please you feel free to type in your question on the Q&A section, or to raise your hand, and our host will give you the permission to speak. We're really sorry for the inconvenience. It seems Dr. Mekhul it seems he has a certain emergency. We'll wait for another few minutes.
Rana, if I may, I just spoke with Fuad now. Both he and Riyad Obaji will be online in 5 minutes. They were both in the same meeting. If I may suggest that we start with the panel discussion, where we start with the questions addressed to Yahya.
Sure, Badri, go ahead. So our panel for today is about environment, social governance, and it will be moderated by Mr. Badri Al-Moushi, Head of Excellence in Governance, Lebanon. Badri will also be introducing the panelists for today. And again, I would like to remind you, in case you wish to raise any question to the panelists, you can do so at any time by typing in your question at the Q&A section, or you can raise your hand and our host will give you permission to speak after the panel. So go ahead, Badri.
Thank you, Rana. And welcome to everyone who's with us today. It's great to see such a high number of you with us. And we're going to be having a very interesting discussion on what is an emerging hot topic, environment, social governance. Let me just turn my camera on too. Let me take this opportunity to introduce our panelists for today. We have Yahya Al-Husseini, who's a corporate governance officer at the International Finance Corporation for our region. And Yahya has been with the IFC for nearly 20 years, if I'm correct.
15.
And 15, yeah, it's getting there. And very much involved in the corporate governance program and its evolution in the region. And we're looking forward to hear from you on the ongoing efforts to promote environment, social governance, and what it is and why it's important in effect. And we have also with us Dr. Riyad Obaji, who's the chairman of BMO Bank and also of Unifair. And looking forward to hear from him regarding the practical aspects of implementation of environment, social governance, especially in a region like ours and in a country like ours, and what in effect is the benefit or the business case for this. So Yahya, I'm going to start with you while we wait for Riyad and Fuad to join us, and Fuad will do his keynote speech after the panel discussion, in effect, before we announce the newly certified corporate directors. If you could just give us an idea of, first of all, what is environment social governance? I think we have several participants with us today who can understand what corporate governance is and be able to explain it. But what's the difference between corporate governance and environment social governance? And in effect, why is the IFC putting so much focus on this? If I understand correctly, from a strategic aspect, the IFC has decided more than a year ago to really focus on this and make it a key part of component of its strategy. So in effect, why is this so important for?
Hi, Badri.
Yahya,
thank you. Yes, sorry, the line cut and came back. So thank you very much, Badri. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm very glad and pleased to speak to you today in this conference on IFC's approach to ESG and sustainability, and our role in promoting best practices as a developmental financial institution and as a global investor. Your question, Badri, is actually, there are three questions bundled together into one question, so let's take them one by one. First, to start with, what is ESG? So to make sure that everyone really understand how we look into ESG and the world and investment community. So the E is apparently the environment aspect. So every company uses energy, resources, and every company affects and is affected by the environment. The E contains water, air pollutions, carbon emissions, climate change, biodiversity, and energy efficiency. When it comes to the S, the social aspect, every company operates within a broader, diverse society. The S addresses the relationships a company has and the reputation it fosters with people and institutions in the communities where it does business. It also includes labor relations, diversity, inclusion, and stakeholder engagement. The G, which has been there for many years, is the governance aspect, where every company in itself is a legal creation and requires governance. The G is the internal system of practices, controls, and procedures a company adopts in order to govern itself, make effective decisions, comply with the law and meets the needs of external stakeholders. So maybe let me quickly give you a little bit of background about the evolution of the ESG, because people think ESG is a new thing, and actually it has been there for some time now. So if we go back to IFC has a long history with environment and social and governance standards. So in 1998, we launched the environmental and social safeguard policies to provide guidance on how to identify the risks and the impacts and a way of doing business in a sustainable manner. And in 1999, we adopted the corporate governance methodology based on the OECD principles. In 2006, later on, we launched the sustainability framework. In 2010, we created the Equator principles that helps in determining and assessing and managing environmental and social risks in project and financial transactions. In 2012, we launched the IFC performance standards that defines our client responsibilities in managing environmental and social risks, and we also updated our sustainability framework. After that, we created the SBN, which is the Sustainable Banking Network, which comprise financial sector regulatory agencies and banking associations from emerging markets. Today, there are 42 member countries in the SBN, and they represent around 40 to 45 trillion dollars, which is 86% of the total banking assets in all emerging markets. And in 2016, we have revised and launched our environmental and social framework. And in 2018, we have updated and expanded the corporate governance methodology to integrate the environmental and social issues, being consistent with the IFC performance standards and policy on environmental and social sustainability. So with regards to the second part of your question about why ESG is becoming now a hot topic and everybody is talking about it. So the three aspects I just explained, the E, the S, the G, they link together in the sense that the environment factors, the social factors, and the governance factors, when they are integrated together, affect the license to operate as a business within the external world. In other words, we think about to what extent a company manages its environmental footprint, to what extent it enhances diversity, to what extent the company is transparent in its contributions to the business and to the community, and to what extent it has good corporate governance and the board is aware and governing the E and the S. This has an impact on the license to operate in the minds of stakeholders around the company, like regulators, governments, employees, investors, customers, and lately the increasing power of social media. This is mainly why there has been such high interest in environmental, social, and governance recently, particularly during the past 5 years. So the three aspects really interact and affect each other. For instance, consumers nowadays are demanding high standards of sustainability and the quality of employment from businesses. Also, regulators and policymakers show more interest in environmental, social, and governance because they need the corporate sector to help them solve environmental pollution, social problems, and workplace diversity. Also, the investor community has also become more interested. If we, for example, we take the US as an example, there is about 1/4 of the assets under management, roughly 10 to 12 trillion dollars, are environmental, social, and governance rated investments. Now, why IFC is focusing on environmental, social, and governance? The key word here is sustainability. It is critical to companies' business success. It's critical too for their customers, surrounding communities, broader stakeholders, and to the environment. IFC help clients understand and manage the ESG risks they face. We partner with different industry players, stakeholders, to work together and find innovative solutions that open up opportunities for economically, social, environmentally sustainable private investment, which in turn will contribute to job creation and inclusive growth. In that part as well, there is an increasing body of research looking and focusing on the link between companies' ESG and the financial performance. About roughly 2,000 academic research studies and papers have been published in that topic, and around 70 to 75% of them, they find a very strong positive relationship between ESG and financial performance and financial returns measured by equity returns, profitability, or even different valuation multiples. And according to McKinsey, a better ESG score for a company translates to about 10% lower cost of capital, as the risks that affect the business in terms of the license to operate are reduced if they have strong environmental, social, and governance propositions. Companies that do good by the environment, their labor force and communities, and are well governed, they do well financially. And lastly, before I give back the mic to you, we did a study and we looked at the performance of around 650 companies in IFC portfolio, which IFC invests in. And we found that companies with good ESG performance, they tend to outperform clients with lower or worse ESG performance by around 210 basis points on return on equity and by 110 BPS on return on assets.
Well, thanks very much, Yahya. That was very informative. And I'm very glad you focused on the word sustainability, because this is actually a key aspect of ESG, as you say, and something very relevant for us in Lebanon and in the region, especially as we rebuild our economy now. But in our work at Tamayaz, we hear increasing interest and demand for support in developing ESG. So there's and the driving factor is always sustainability, regardless of the sector that is, regardless of what sector the company that approaches us is in effect. What kind of services or tools will be available or developed by the IFC to support companies in implementing ESG?
Okay, so we've been really active in that area for a couple of years now, and as I mentioned earlier, we have really updated our corporate governance methodology to integrate environmental and social aspects into that methodology. And we have developed ESG policies, guidelines, and tools, and they are widely adopted as market standards and embedded into the operation policies by many corporations, investors, financial intermediaries, stock exchanges, and regulators around the world. This helps emerging markets raise their ESG standards and level the playing field. Our last client survey, for instance, show that nearly 90% of our clients, investment clients and advisory clients, believe that our environmental, social, and governance support is key in helping them reach their long-term business goals, improve their relation with stakeholders and local communities, and boost their performance, the brand value, and recognition. The methodology that we have is an approach to evaluate and improve the corporate governance of the company, including the governance attributes of key environmental and social policies and procedures to identify and mitigate and reduce risks. Using our methodology of corporate governance, as well as the very well-known IFC 8 performance standards on environment and social, we work with clients whom we provide with investment services like loan, equity, trade finance, and so on, and advisory services like ESG, financial management, diversity, inclusion, etc., to raise their ESG standards, level the playing field, and improve performance. We work very closely with the government and regulatory authorities to advance their ESG reform agenda. We partner with local intermediaries and local institutions like EIGL, Tamayaz in Lebanon. We do the same in many other markets as well, to raise the awareness on the importance and the value of environmental, social, and governance, and to promote ESG best practices. We do that through a variety of director training programs, cater for different types of companies and a wide variety of sectors. And actually, I'm currently working with one of the regulatory authorities in MENA on revising their ESG framework, introduce new environmental, social, and governance-related laws, develop sustainability reporting guidance, and ESG KPIs, which companies will be required to report on. So we've been very, very active in this area at different levels.
That's great to hear. So in effect, you're working with regulators to improve their ability to oversee implementation of such standards. You're working with companies to develop assessment methodologies and recommendations, and also training programs for the leadership of those companies. One more question for you, but first I wanted to give a warm welcome to Dr. Riyad Obaji. Great to have you with us. And before we come on to you, Dr. Riyad, we're going to ask Yahya one final question. From a practical perspective, what indicators or standards can companies turn to judge what progress they're making, in effect? Are there indicators that have been developed at an international level which we can, in effect, use here and adapt to our context if needed? Which organizations are developing those indicators, and where can we find them?
That's a very good question, Badri. So globally, we have MSCI, which rates equity and fixed income securities, loan, mutual funds, etc. And they have an ESG rating system designed to measure companies. They call it resilience to long-term ESG material risks. Their methodology is based on a rule-based methodology to identify industry leaders as well as laggards according to their exposure to the ESG risk and how well they manage those risks relative to their peers. The ESG ratings they have at MSCI ranges between a leader AAA and to a laggard CCC. And actually, just 2 days ago, if anyone is interested, you can go to the MSCI website. They have published a survey 2 days ago showing how interconnected risks present challenges. The survey reveals that global investors accelerate ESG investments in response to the pandemic, the COVID pandemic, and around 31% of the largest institutional investors say climate change will be the biggest impact and the way they invest over the next 3 to 5 years. Nearly also a third of those investors are regularly using climate data to manage risk. Now, almost all investment houses around the world and big financial investment consultancy firms are using either their own or an adopted ESG rating system. For instance, Thomson Reuters come to my mind. They are continuously assessing and rating the ESG for companies around the world, including MENA. And they are actually selling this data to investors to help them make informed investment decisions. But the relevant ESG factors or KPIs, they do vary. So if you take, for instance, the oil and gas industry, there is a very strong focus on the carbon emissions reduction. If you take the pharmaceutical industry, the focus is on drug safety and quality. So picking industry by industry lens is really critical. And we now see ESG scoring agencies building deeper industry-specific ratings when it comes to ESG. In MENA, we have an ESG index in Egypt developed by the Egyptian Exchange, Standard & Poor's, with the support from IFC many years ago. We also have Hawkama in the UAE. They have an ESG index for a select number of Arab countries. And recently, I think maybe last year, mid last year, the Arab Federation for Stock Exchanges, they have developed also an ESG index with Refinitiv. So that's in a nutshell. The accessibility of those KPIs or rating, of course, is not open to the public because those investment houses are selling those data to global investors. But the methodology, I think it's published online in terms of KPIs. Also, you can refer to the IFC website. We have if you go to ifc.org/sustainability, you'll find all the performance indicators that we use to measure the governance based on our methodology, as well as the performance standards that IFC use when we work with our clients.
Thanks very much, Yahya. And I think maybe one thing we could do, which the audience might find useful, is maybe we'll compile a list of links which provide more information on these indicators and different types of indicators and how, in effect, to use them. And we'll make we'll share that with everyone here through social media. So thanks very much. First, before we move on to Dr. Riyad Abaji, just a warm welcome also to Dr. Fuad Zmokhol. Sorry, Fuad, I know you tried to call me a couple of minutes ago, but I wasn't able to answer. I'm glad that the connection issues were sorted out. Dr. Abaji, if you could, I mean, having heard, and I know you've done your own research also on ESG. If you could give us your perspective, if you like, on well, first of all, how important do you think this is for us in Lebanon and the region, and the extent to which it is applicable, to which you see it being applied already in some ways. It would be great to hear your perspective on this and your experience, not only in the banking sector, but also in other sectors and companies that you chair.
Okay. First of all, please accept my excuses for having arrived late to all of you, and thank you to listen to me. Now, ESG, I think, is very important. It is true that until now, what has happened, in my opinion, in Lebanon, is that some companies have applied the elements of the ESG, either because there was some pressure from the central bank in the case of banks, or from the civil society, or through advice from IFC or other institution. But it was not really neither systematic nor deliberate, and it was not general. So I think that we are not in Lebanon committed enough to ESG. Now things have to change, because I believe it is very important. I heard a little bit earlier sustainability. I think that today we are more in the mode of survivability, and in the case of Lebanon, in the present situation, it is really survivability, and ESG, not necessarily through the set of measurements that are there, but through the spirit of ESG, is a tool to obtain survivability. So what is the spirit, in my opinion, of ESG? I don't know if I'm going to be contradicted. I think it is based mostly on respect. You respect your the generations to come. You respect the community. You respect the stakeholders. You respect. So it is respect, and this, if you are serious about respect, then you are responsible, and it is responsibility. So if I come to what our bank did, I think we tried to act as responsibly as possible. And to act as responsibly, it meant for us to have ourselves courage, and trying to instill courage in others. I'll give you a few examples of what we BMO did. When everybody in Lebanon was depressed, and I'm talking not about the last few months, I'm talking about 1 year or 2 years ago, we decided that we were not going to fire employees, except if there were good reasons. We're not going to stop credit to our clients. We're going to continue lending to our clients. We're going to continue working as a bank, and not to liquidate the bank slowly by refusing deposits, refusing lending. We tried to play a role with the community. So when there was this event after the explosion, some of you might have heard about Recollect Beirut. We were behind this initiative, and it was extremely important. In the same tone, the exhibition L'Art Blessé, that I invite everybody to go to if they can, or at least to look at the movie that was done on this exhibition. I think, is it is the acting responsibly, maybe not according to the set of rules of the ESG or the measurements that are given by the IFC, but according to the spirit of it. It is how do you give courage to your community, how do you act responsibly, how do you act for the future. So we did that. We also participated to an initiative of laptops for our children. So we distributed laptops with other partners in that. And I think that also partnership is an important element in what we are doing. We have to partner with as many people as possible, because Lebanon is not going to survive just with one company or with just one person or just with one group of persons. It's going to survive all together. So we did that partnering with others. We also did a number of other things. We took interns. We did digital internships when nobody was taking interns, and it was very important, not only in order to get some help at one moment, but also to be able to give some revenues to people who had difficulties paying their tuitions, and in the same time giving them this money, but against something that they were doing. So it was also respect for those people. You don't pay money without asking for something in return. It is a minimum in the respect. We did also we allocated an envelope of loans for the reconstruction of the houses and the businesses that were destroyed at the blast. So, and I cannot mention everything that we did in the last 2 years, but we did a lot, and we believe that it was our responsibility. And I think that this is ESG. Now, what ESG is, the ESG that IFC is working on is giving us, additionally to this spirit, it is the set of measurements. At the end, as all of you know, if you can't measure, you cannot improve. So we might have very good intentions, but if we don't have the measurements, it is going to be difficult to sustain this effort. So we want this effort to continue, not only from the others, but also from us. Now, there is one question that you asked me, not now, but you sent it to me. What can banks do in order to encourage their clients to do ESG? First of all, we have to give the good example, of course. If we don't give the good example, it's not going to work, whatever we give as incentive. But also, we can give incentives. We can give better rates for clients who are applying ESG, who are well rated. We can also do some framing, because we have, I hope, still some credibility with our clients. And when a bank says, we are confident in this client, theoretically, and I hope in the future, practically, it will encourage other people to work with this person. Maybe we will not say he's a client, because otherwise we would be breaking the banking secrecy. But we will say we are happy with what this company is doing in terms of ESG. And this is important. Also, we can put together several people who would like to partner, because partnership is also essential for the future of Lebanon. If we are not able to partner together, all of us, then we are not going to be able to survive. So there are financial incentives, there are reputation incentives that we can offer to our clients, and there are also networking incentives. So I see what banks can do in terms of ESG is on several levels, and all those levels are useful for the country and for each of our clients. So I don't know if I answered all your questions. I considered that I had 10 minutes. So as I finished my 10 minutes, I don't know.
Thank you very much. And I think, indeed, you did answer the questions which we wanted to discuss today. Specifically, the practical aspect of what would be the benefit, what would be the business case for a company to do this. From what I know, you are one of the rare, if not the only bank that's still lending to its clients in Lebanon. So that is an amazing thing. And we all hope that that's going to continue.
I don't hope, sorry, Badri. I don't hope we'll say the only one lending.
No, I mean, I hope you will continue to be lending to your clients.
Yes, we will continue to be lending, but I hope
I hope the situation hopefully will get better for the whole sector to, in effect, pick up again. But in effect, what you were telling us is that it is possible to implement decisions which reflect the best interest of the community, which reflect the best interest of your own organization, and which reflect the best interest of the environment. And let's hope that we can work in partnership, and there are opportunities for that, and look forward to discussing that with you to see how we can push that agenda in all the relevant sectors. And of course, organizations like the IFC, with their with the different services and tools that they develop, whether it's training services or advisory services or assessment services, these will also hopefully help to push this agenda forward in Lebanon and the region. We're going to go to the questions of the audience in a moment, but before that, I'd like to give Dr. Fuad Smokhol the opportunity to give his keynote speech. Fuad, it's a pleasure to have you with us, and thank you for making it.
First, my deep apology for delay out of control. I'm really sorry, but I started following on the phone while being connected. First, thank you very much for this gathering. Thank you very much for this conference. I mean, I think that in such discussions, we bring back a lot of not only pride, but a lot of hope, a lot of faith that we have companies, we have business people that still believe in themselves, still believe in their company, still believe in their environment, and still believe in governments. And I think these are the key for the next phase. I mean, the title of today's meeting is the environment, social governance that has been tackled by the previous speaker, my dear friend and colleague, Mr. Yahya Hosseini and Dr. Riyad Abaji. I will divide the three words and I will tackle it in 1 minute each. When we say environment, I think that each one of us has to understand and to be aware that the whole environment, the worldwide environment, is completely shifting and changing. The regional environment is shifting and the local one too. When I say environment, I mean not only our businesses, our family, our way of thinking, our politics, our companies, everything is changing and moving. I think that the pandemic have shifted a lot of things in the negative way, of course, but some in a positive way. So when I say environment, I think that any restructuring, anything that we will go further, have to start by studying exactly what does the environment needs, what are the potential opportunity that we can find within the environment, what are the new threats that we have into the environment, and how we can support our environment in order to sustain. And this is the first part. The second issue, when we talk about social, I think that we have discussed a lot about the social responsibility, our social support, but finally, there can never be any economy, even any governance, without having a social support. Social support starts from what we call our internal customers, which are our clients. Social support starts from our country. Social support from some of our internal politics. We might be mad about any social support that we have in our region or our country, but this starts from a social support from our own companies, from our own beliefs. And I think this is how we can look forward for any change and complete restructuring. And we come back to governance. I think that Badri, you do recall, I mean, when we used to go since 2005 through the OECD meetings and we were discussing about governance. So the governance was the major issue to reduce our costs, to have certain criteria, to have transparency. I mean, the major issue we were always lobbying for are now applicable, because the company, the worldwide company, the region company, and the local company that were able to face the crisis and to face all the challenges are those who have been applying good corporate governance since a couple of years or even a previous generation. I think that we have the perfect proof that how governance can help company not only sustain but survive, develop, and move forward. And I think that today, I think that governance will be the most important issue, because this will be the only way. I still hope that the banks will be able to lend, but we cannot anymore build any system based, specifically in Lebanon, based on lending. I mean, even if you have lending, we know this will be minimum. The idea would be how to attract some new equity, how to build merger, how to build acquisition, how to form this new system. And to get this, it will need, of course, in environment studies, social support, and of course excellent governance, because without governance we won't be able not to be visible in anti radars of investment, but at the same time impossible to do any merger, any acquisition. And when I say merger and acquisition, because there are two types of having merger acquisition. Usually you do merger acquisition instead when you have a development, when you want to go into diversification, or when you want to decrease your cost, fade the prices, and again do your new strategy. I think that we are today in option B, where we have to, I think, do a couple of steps backward, review exactly where we are, where we're standing, exactly what are the points, what are our small objectives, what are our achievable goals, and how to get it again through a full strategy developed on the environment study, the social support we can do for the closest, and then we go backward, and then the full governance that starts from the management, from the strategy, from the board, from independent board. And I know that we have a list of new independent board that will be certified. I think that any companies, any government will need this kind of independent board to bring something new, to bring their creativity, to bring their innovation. And I would like to sum up into a 4R strategy that is completely linked to the new world economy and specifically to the new environmental social governance, which is number one, how to resolve the day-and-day problems. That's the first R. How to resolve the immediate actions, how to resolve and face the crisis. And this would be crisis management. I think that year 2020 was the year of crisis management. Year 2021 should be the year of decisions. It can be good ones, it can be bad ones, but before staying into uncertainty, if you have a choice, staying uncertain and wait and take a decision, I would rather go to the decision, even the decision is not 100% secure. So I think that this year would be the year where we will try to resolve the problems that we got, and specifically where we take new decision, whatever the decision. But please, my first idea is please take decisions with what you can. It can be for small decisions, small objective. The second one, when we say resilience, resilience is not anymore based only on the pandemic, but resilience will start to be on the supply chain. Resilience will be on the export. Resilience will be how the country will start again to build the new criteria, because I think that even the World Trade Organization will have to review all the things. So exactly how you would be resilient to the coming period, not resilience to the pandemic, but resilience to the coming years after the pandemic. And I call this the pandexit, is what will be the strategy, because this will have a lot of some growth into some company, but I think that it will bring a lot of deficits with new I would say new viruses that will be much more social and economic. And three would be extremely important. My third R would be the return. It's extremely important through our new governance model not to try to return to the old model, because it's impossible. The world has evolved. But to return and to find your new balance, your new exactly certainty point. And the return is very important, to return to a kind of a certain wave, of a certain strategy where we can again build again your new baseline and the new pillars, find the new leaders, again, find the new leaders, and find the new champion. And I think this, I end up with my third R, and I think that we have to reimaginate ourselves, reimaginate our knowledge, reimaginate our experience. And this is be linked how the environment is completely being redesigned, but at the same time, the governance models of our company. So I think we have together to discover this new world, because they have a new world, so we have to discover it by taking decision. Two, we have to design the new models, and again, completely related to the ESG. We have to decide, and without decision, I think even bad ones, I would rather take a bad decision than take a decision that is based on uncertainty. And I think that we have to deliver new messages that we say that we are here to stay as companies. We are here to develop. We are here to diversify. We are open to any kind of new investment. We want to attract different kind of investors. And I think this is the new era we're going to. But this has to start today. I think that the lockdown have made us think differently. The lockdown have helped us read differently. The lockdown have helped us to be 76 on a call while not even seeing each other. I mean, we have so much to gain from that. But I think that we have to work on ourselves, and then to work on our small environment, and then to make a boule-de-neige effect to take it on the other side. So I think that, yes, we might have threat, but personally, I see a lot of opportunities for those who will be able to focus exactly on what the new environment will offer and what they can give to the new environment. And that's something good, because when you give, you can get. Two, you can never do any restructuring without focusing on any social support for your own people. And I say you people as companies, organization, but then I go on a micro level and even a macro level. And this is extremely important to develop the growth. And two, again, I would say governance. And again, because it's through governance that you will get liquidity, you will get growth, you will get, people around you, and you will face the crisis. And in my view, not only face the crisis, but I think that the world will be for those who will have the best governance, first as countries, as companies, and as region. I hope I have used my 5 minutes. I can, but I think that we'll have a lot to talk into the Q&A. Thank you very much, Badri. And once again, my deep apology for a delay beyond my will and control.
Thank you very much, Fuad, and also thank you for your kind of optimism, because we need that, and for also focusing on the need for action, for taking decisions and moving forwards. We cannot stay in limbo forever, and I think this applies to not only the private sector, but also most certainly to the public sector and to our public officials. I imagine that as the new dean of Université Saint-Joseph, the new dean of the business school, you are bringing many of these ideas into how to prepare new generations for these, in effect, emerging challenges and ongoing challenges. I won't ask any questions because I prefer that we go straight to the audience. We have several questions from the audience, some of which we have already, in effect, addressed on whether the IFC will be developing training and advisory and support kind of tools to help companies implement ESG. And as Yahya confirmed to us, this is going to be done. And in fact, it is already in progress. And we hope that later this year, some of these services will start to be launched. We have some other questions. For example, how does a NIMBY process affect the environment and social governance? Yahya, I'm not sure if this one would go to you. This question is from Fadi Fawaz. Fadi, if you want to clarify.
Yeah, I was actually writing the answer to Fadi. Thank you, Fadi. So that's a very good point, and actually everyone should be involved. NIMBY is a common expression, which is not in my backyard. I assume that's the question that he alludes to. So my quick answer is that everyone has to be involved. Some companies and institutions say we don't care, about the environment or the social aspects and governance and so on, as long as it's not in my backyard. And that's how the NIMBY expression came. But actually, it is the responsibility of all the community, all stakeholders, regulators, consumers, suppliers, everyone. And actually, if I can tell you that nowadays it's very, very difficult to be a supplier for a large company if you're not really implementing good environmental and social governance practices. But I've read recently an article. There's a website blog called Sense and Sustainability. There is an article by someone called Adam. I can't recall his family name, but he proposes a very good answer to Fadi, which is we need to move from the NIMBY to the SIMBY. SIMBY being sensible in my backyard, where every company and everyone needs to ask, like important questions, like what I'm doing, my project, will it help in the common good? Will it help the environment? Will it help the workforce? Will it help the country at large? That's the shift in mentality we need to have. Back to you, Badri. I hope I answered this question.
Thank you, Yahya. Fadi, if you have any additional question, please, or follow-up question on what Yahya said, please go ahead. You can either ask it by text or in the Q&A part, or you can raise your hand and we can actually give you the microphone and you can participate in the discussion. We're going to be having a Q&A for a maximum 10 minutes before we move on to the certification ceremony. We have another question here. I think Yahya well, we have a lot of doctors here. All three of you are doctors, so any one of you could answer. The question being, how much is CSR an important part of ESG?
Yeah, I can take this quickly and pass the baton to my colleagues on the panel. So CSR, to put it in the context, CSR is a drop in the ocean when it comes to ESG. That's the short answer. And unfortunately, there are many companies and countries in emerging markets still look into ESG as only a check mark for CSR, corporate social responsibility. It's only one aspect of the S when it comes to ESG. We should look into this with a much bigger lens. It's important to have CSR, but it's not the full story. There are many other factors and variables, as I discussed at the beginning of this event, that companies should look into when it comes to environmental, social, and governance. Not only the CSR. CSR, even in our region, companies are taking it as a form of giving back to the community, donations, grants, and so on, which is good in that sense. But that's not the full story. Mr. Riyad, Dr. Riyad, or
thank
Dr.
you,
Fuad,
would you like to add anything to that, Riyad or Fuad, before we move on to the other questions?
No. I think that CSR is very important, but as you mentioned, it is not exactly the same. It is part of it. I totally agree.
I also agree. I mean, it's a part of it. We started, but it's a much more global. I mean, ESG, it's much more global, and it's but one of it can be a CSR, as I perfectly said.
Thank you, and I think this links a bit to our next question. In effect, well, it's a question and an observation from Pierre Sabalani. First of all, MSCI, Yahya, which you mentioned, just downgraded Lebanon to standalone market. Apparently, so there's another unfortunate set of news for the country. But within that context, is there space for individual companies who adopt ESG standards to really stand out despite the fact that the market is in such a poor condition? I think this would be an interesting question to address. And secondly, in a sense linked to the first question, and maybe be interesting to hear from all three of you on this one, is how can the Lebanese financial institutions regain trust? Slowly, for sure, it most likely will take time, but regain trust of the local depositors and the foreign investors and corresponding banks and analysts, etc. So these are two questions to consider. I'll let you decide. Maybe we hear from Yahya regarding the question of whether being a company that implements proper ESG standards in a standalone market would actually help this company to attract foreign investment, to attract capital, despite the fact that the market is in such a terrible state.
شوف يعني هو طبعا it's difficult to fix everything and play with one variable. There is a huge amount of variables playing together at the same time, juggling with different moving targets, being political, be it economy. In terms of crisis, I'm talking about the current situation now. So if you have good ESG in this context, aiming to attract investment, it can help for sure. I can tell you now that there is no one international investor can put a penny in a company without doing the proper due diligence when it comes to environmental, social, and governance, period. Even if the company does not have the best standards in the world, because it's taken for granted for obvious reasons, still, if the company have the commitment and they have showed that they are on the right track to improve, the investor might help them if they offer services like what IFC does. But in a nutshell, even though if they did not manage to attract the foreign investment in the time of the crisis, working on improving the company internally and putting the right standards into place at this time of the crisis will help them a lot. So once the crisis finishes, they can take off and have a leapfrog compared to their peers and competitors, and they really can be at the forefront to attract local and foreign investment.
Thanks, Yahya. Riyad, Fuad, would you like to add anything to this, to these questions here that were just mentioned?
Riyad?
Yes, I can answer about the question below, which is how can Lebanese financial institutions regain trust?
Mm-hmm.
Not directly about ESG in general. Would you like that I do that?
We would like any insight you may have on this, because it's a major concern on many of our minds, no doubt. We want to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but what is the process for getting there, in effect?
Okay. In fact, all of you know that trust comes from within, from inside each one of us. If you don't trust yourself, it's difficult that other people will trust you. So you have to begin trusting yourself, and then you have to act as you say and say as you act. So you have to be very transparent and be also acting in accordance to what you are saying. It's true, it is difficult, it requires courage, but if there is no courage, then there is nothing will happen. And I would say local depositors are even more important than foreign investors, because if you are not able to convince the people who are closest to you, who are the people who have trusted you so long, I think it is ridiculous to go and chase people who did not trust you in the previous place and who are far from you. I think that this destroys trust when you are chasing people who don't know you very well, when you should first convince the people who are closest to you. So I would say, trust yourself. Try to build trust with the closest people to you, and then you'll get everything. You'll get your people, and you'll get the foreign investors.
Can I comment, Badri? Badri has freezed. Can you hear me?
I can hear you very well.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
yes.
perfect.
I will comment. Thank you, Riyad.
Yes, I will comment on the trust issue, because I think that's the core of the problem. I think that we have three kinds of trust. We have the sovereign trust, which is the trust on the country, which is related to the sovereign risk, and this unfortunately will take a lot of time, and we know that this will have to have a completely changes through elections with a lot of things. I do believe that we might get over it a day, but this is the first trust that should not be linked directly to the corporate. Two, we have the trust into the financial system, and you have the trust into the industrial and the commercial system. And I think these are the two issues where we have to stress. I will start by the trust into the financial system. Personally, I would say as a depositor, I think that for banks to regain trust will be for the banks to give new guarantees. And I think this is the thing, to have, in order to attract any kind of deposits or any kind of investor. I think the whole issue would be how much the banks may be liquid or able or willing to give any new kind of guarantees, and specifically kind of foreign guarantees, because the local guarantees would be much difficult. And I think this will be the very important issue for any a local bank to get again the trust, because this will bring back a lot of liquidity, I think, into the banking system. And this is not very easy, but this, you have to be liquid, you have to have foreign investors, and this, in my view, will bring some liquidity into the system and will help. Two, I think that we have to trust a lot the industrial sector, because we have a sector that today can be much more competitive and then can generate new funds. So I think that the industrial sector can play a very important role. I come back to the idea of social governance, because the industrial system today, I think, may attract some investor, because they're much more competitive. They have a competitive edge. They can develop, they can diversify, and this would be extremely important. And the third one would be the trust into the agriculture. That's a sector that we completely forgot. But again, I think that the agriculture, para agriculture and things can be very important. So I think that trust should be related into sectors, trust should be related to companies, and trust should be related into people. And this is how we will rebuild the trust, in my view, in a global sense. But to say that we will get back trust into Lebanon or a sector like that will be very difficult. And we need some success stories. We need some financial institution that will be able to make that step further, and starting attracting other. And I can tell you that other will follow. We need some people to put the good example for others to imitate, and that's how we will be able to move forward. So yes, trust can be rebuilt into the private sector.
And if I might add, that we need also leaders in the public sector who implement reforms which inspire trust and which inspire the space for opportunity and for economic growth. So yes, we have a role to play in the private sector, but we also need our counterparts in the public sector, in politics, to also, quite frankly, get their act in order. There's no other way to put it. We have to wrap up. There's two more questions. One which will be, I think, possible to answer from any three of you, but one which is specifically Dr. Riyad Obaji has requested to answer it. Let me start with the one which is addressed to all of you. How can we, as individuals, benefit from ESG programs? And also, how can we benefit from it at an institutional level or at a governmental level, which in effect ties into what we were talking about and this whole aspect of trust on a national level. So that's the first question. And the final question, social responsibility for survivability. So in a sense, could we imagine that the top 100 Lebanese enterprises and banks accelerate the vaccination program with the required funding in order to get the Lebanese economy freed from COVID confinements and growing again as soon as possible? Maybe, Dr. Obaji, maybe we start with you on that answer, and then we'll move on to the other question to close on, in effect.
I don't have an answer to this question, but I like very much the question, because it is, in fact, an invitation to act together to accelerate the recovery. So I like very much the question, although I don't have an answer. I doubt that the 100 largest companies will do that, but I think that it has a lot of merit. This question in itself has a lot of merit, and I thank the who asked it.
Fuad, what do you think? Do you think that, for example, this world for universities could work together to make this happen? Is it a realistic prospect?
Okay, thank you very much, I mean, for raising this, so Mr. Hnaini, and I tell you that we are discussing it as much as we can, but we have to be realistic. And we know that we have a large company, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm naming Pfizer, or AstraZeneca that are not willing to sell to the private sector. For them, they only sell to government. So any order that will come will be automatically dispersed and given for the government to be able to distribute. That's how it's going into countries. We're trying to lobby to change that, but it's extremely difficult to change anything. So in order to be able to do that, we need the companies, the mother company, to accept. Until this minute, the only company, and I'm telling you, that might have accepted are the Russian vaccine that is able and to sell directly to the private sector for them to distribute. And the Moderna is not doing it yet. And for Chinese, they might do it. So it's a question as being of having the availability of the vaccine. So yes, we are extremely interested first to help, and at the same time to do it for the company we represent. I can tell you that we have a lot of companies that are able to invest themselves to vaccinate 3,000, 4,000, 5,000. We have even ideas saying that, okay, in order to make it easier, we're ready to, for each one to buy a vaccine, to offer one for somebody else specifically who cannot afford it. So these are the kind of issue we are proposing. But the trick into it is to find the adequate vaccine that the companies will be able to sell to private companies that will themselves distribute, which is not the case today with Pfizer and with AstraZeneca, with whom we already did the contacts. And the only acceptable contact we have till today is a Russian vaccine. And I'm not going to go into any medical issue on that. I'm just reading like everyone. You have some negative effects, others have only positives. So yes, I hope to do it. And finally, to be able to answer the question, the only way, in my view, specifically in Lebanon, to overcome this challenge is when the private sector will be able themselves to get the vaccine and to vaccinate their people and to enlarge it. I do believe that this will be the only way, exactly as we did with PCR. I think that the PCR, for those who doesn't know, that most of the PCR that were distributed specifically were grants that we got or that were directly support from company and from association and others. So I see it happening exactly the same with the vaccine, but we need the supply. Without the supply, this will be impossible.
Thank you very much, Fuad. Yahya, would you like to have the final word, maybe just to answer the question on the extent to which an individual can develop from ESG programs, such as the ones that the IFC will be developing, will be launching later on this year, but also from an institutional level, from a government level, how could governments use ESG in effect?
So in terms of
just to explain this question was asked by Hassan Danawi, which himself is the head of the Triple Economic Freeze.
Sorry, Badri, the line is breaking. I'm not sure whether it's from my side or your side, but I understood that you want me to address the question of Mr. Hassan about the programs of IFC. So can you hear me well?
Mazboot.
Perfect.
Okay. So basically, and I answered this in one of the questions on the Q&A. But basically, we are working now. We have a lot of people working on updating the existing corporate director certification program to an environmental, social, and governance certification program for corporate directors. We're working with different departments and units within IFC, as well as consultants to tap on their expertise in this from different parts of the world. We envision that the toolkit will be ready sometime in March or April, and we'll launch it in MENA around that time with all of our partners in different countries. When it comes to Lebanon, it would be with Excellence in Governance Lebanon Tamayaz, hopefully around April. And I advise everyone to have a close eye on the website of EIGL around that time. They also should send, maybe drop an email to EIGL just to put their name and email and contact in their database. So that once we launch the program together, you will receive the notification. The program, in a nutshell, is will be focusing on corporate governance as it was in the past. It was 100% corporate governance program. Now we are integrating environmental and social from the aspect of how the board should govern ENS. We will have some maybe 1 or 2 or 3 modules technical when it comes to environmental and social, ESMS, environmental social management systems of companies, environmental social risk management, environmental social assessment, and so on. And hopefully this will continue rolling out across IFC globally. We have many of my colleagues in corporate governance and environmental social specialists are working with us on this specific program. It will be launched, as I mentioned, around March, April in MENA, but it will also go to be launched in other regions as well after we do some adaptation and localization of the content. The second question regarding what should the public sector or companies do in that front, I think we start with the regulatory agencies or regulatory authorities to introduce some amendments to the existing laws and regulations to allow for environmental, social, and governance provisions. We usually start with the banking sector and the listed companies, since we don't have much listed companies in Lebanon, in Beirut Bourse. So we are looking forward to work with the Lebanese Central Bank and become maybe a member of the SBN at some point as well, and we can introduce that. When it comes to the public sector, I think this is a little bit outside the scope of IFC, since we focus more working with the private sector. I think this is more at the World Bank group talking to governments about how to integrate the environmental social aspect as well as corporate governance for public or state-owned companies. تمام؟ Badri? I think we're losing you, Badri.
Thank you very much, Yahya.
Okay, thank you.
And no, I still have you. Can you hear me? Can you
yes,
hear me?
the line is a little bit breaking, but I can see you. I can hear you now.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Yahya, for these clarifications. And I'm afraid we have to wrap up now. We've run out of time, and we have to move on to the certification ceremony. I want to thank very much Dr. Riyad Obaji, Dr. Fouad Zmokhol, and Dr. Yahya Al-Husseini for being with us today. It was very, and looking forward to the next time for sure. We move on now to the certification ceremony, and we're very proud to be announcing 49 newly certified corporate directors who have successfully completed the program and the online examination. Rana, I pass it on to you for the announcement of newly certified corporate directors. And thank you to the audience, of course.
Thank you, Badri. I think we're losing you, so I'm going to take over. So again, I would like to thank all the panelists and our esteemed speakers for their valuable input. And we're going to move on straight to the certification ceremony, during which I will be listing our newly certified corporate directors. In this listing, I will be dividing the newly certified directors into 3 groups. The first group will be the directors who have applied independently to the program. The second group will be listing the newly certified directors who applied through LLWB, the Lebanese League for Women in Business. And the third group will be listing the newly certified directors who applied through ACAL. Moving on straight to the newly certified directors, our first, I'm going to be listing them in alphabetical order. Mr. Ahmad Jannoun, Ms. Christian Amar, Mrs. Coralie Zakkar, Ms. Dina Harake, Mr. Fadi Fawad, Mr. Farid Meshakka, Mr. Hassan Dannawi, Mr. Ibrahim Salibi, Mrs. Lina Hallab, Mr. Majd Abdu, Mr. Marwan Asta, Mrs. Mayada Baidas, Mr. Pierre Kairouz, Mr. Roland Salloum, Mrs. Salma Sabra, Mr. Sami Saade, Mr. Sarkish Khawaja, and Mr. Yusuf D, and Mr. Ziad Flouti, and Mr. Ziad Atiq. So congratulations to all our independent certified directors. And now we're gonna move on to listing the newly certified directors who applied through the Lebanese League for Women in Business, starting with Mrs. Banna Kubrosi, Mrs. Cynthia Wardi, Ms. Dina Sfer, Ms. Jocelyn Gerges, Mrs. Lara Jubaili, Mrs. Marianne Bitar Karam, Mrs. Martine Isabel Hushar, Mrs. Naila Saba, Ms. Stephanie Saloum, Mr. Antoine Berbere, and last but not least, I'm gonna be calling Mr. Osama Salman, who got newly certified as a corporate director from the IFC, to be listing the newly certified directors who applied through ACAL. Hello, Osama.
Thank you very much, Rana.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. If you allow me, before we proceed with the listing of the names, I would like, first of all, on behalf of ACAL, the Association of Insurance Companies in Lebanon, and its president, Mr. Eli Torbay, and the Corporate Governance Committee at ACAL, I would like to thank the IFC, Tamayyaz, and the IG for this opportunity. And I would also like to welcome all the graduates, and in particular, ACAL graduates, who, despite all the challenging time we are going through, decided to pursue personal developments and work on their skills and expertise because they believe we deserve a better future. ACAL actually is honored with its partnership with the IFC, Tamayyaz, and the IG, and I would like to personally thank again Yahya, Eli, Badri, Nadine, and Joseph for all the efforts they did throughout the 2 cycles that we conducted at the ACAL premises. And also to send this thank you note to our previous president, Mr. Max Zakkar, who launched this program at ACAL. We are honored today to participate in this ceremony in order to announce the names of our colleagues. Rana, if you can lead, please, the slides, I would be grateful. Our first colleague, congratulations, Mr. Alan Kallasi, Mrs. Amira Shamma, Mr. Bassem Asi, Mrs. Carla Abdo, Mr. Sharbil Salemi, Mrs. Christine Rashid Tami, Mr. Jean Hlaes, Mrs. Joanne Tabit, Mrs. Marley Matta, Mr. Murad Aoun, Mr. Nadim Jmayil, Mr. Pierre Sabalani, Mr. Raed Labaki, Mr. Ramzi Mrad, Mr. Raymond Sham, Mrs. Rita Al-Sokhon, Mr. Roger Zakkar, Mrs. Yumna Jmayil, Mrs. Zena Urfali. Thank you, everyone, for your participation and for this opportunity.
Thank you, Osama, and thank you, everyone. Badri, are you still here?
Yes, I am, yes. So this brings us to the end of the event. Thank you very much, Rana and Osama. And Mabruk to all the newly certified corporate directors. And we look forward to inviting you to future events and hope to do a live event as soon as COVID-19 restrictions allow, to do it safely and to celebrate your success together. So thank you again to everyone and looking forward to stay in touch. And as we said, we will prepare a post on social media with all the relevant links to the indicators and different providers of KPI indicators on ESG and share them with all the audience and our network. So again, thank you to everyone, and a big thank you to Yahya, Fuad, and Riyad for your participation in the discussion today.
Thank you very much, Badri.
Goodbye,
thank
everyone.
you, everyone, and congratulations to all the graduates. Well deserved.
Thank you very much. Congratulations to all.
Thank
All. And congratulations.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Badri.
Thank you, everyone, and wishing you a pleasant evening.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.